Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, both now and ever, and unto the ages of ages. Amen. Our Lady, Queen of Peace, pray for us. Our Lady, Queen of Palestine, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and to the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, here we are, everybody. Last lecture of the year, of our season of talks. As I've said to some of you already, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to go forward. As you can see, the attendance at the lectures isn't exactly overwhelming. And there's Rona, marvelous. And so it's made me really begin to think about whether this is the best format, really. It's like all things, things get a bit tired, and we have been having lectures now for 2 years, which built on 2 years of the academy course. So it's been sort of 4 years, really, that we've 3 to 4 years that we've been trundling together. So it's always good, I think, to review where you are and to keep it fresh. Now, having said that, I think there's been some really good developments over the last year. The icon painting handbook being one of them, and that's really gone down very well. And I had lots of very positive comments about that. The tutorial group, there aren't, there's only 2 groups, and they're not sort of full of 1,000 people, but I think, 3 of you who are here now are in them. And I think they prove very fruitful and beneficial for those who belong to them. And that provides a sort of stability to the group as well. And I do know that when I do sort of a course, say over a week or 2 weeks online, that people do generally really like that, and do quite like to have them. So I think it's not that people are just sort of switched off and disappeared, but I think what seems to work at a particular time shifts, and now COVID is long gone, and people are back into sort of normal routines and things. It's not a bad thing to rethink. So I've been thinking of maybe stopping the lecture series as such, and instead of which to have live broadcasts via YouTube, which will be open to everybody and be free. And the reason I say that is because I think a lot of the bits and pieces that I end up saying are generally quite well appreciated, and people, benefit from that. But you know what people are like, actually having to fork out money for everything can be a bit off-putting. And I think part of the idea I quite like is developing a community of people and being able to sort of share some insights and encourage people along the way. So I'm thinking that I'll do occasional broadcasts, which I'll let people know I'm going to do in advance. And sometimes there might be a couple of months, and sometimes there might not be anything for 3 months. So it'll be much more occasional and irregular rather than something which is set to a particular time. And I'll just see how that goes. If that proves popular, then fine. If it doesn't, then we'll find something else to do. I have got a residential course here in this very studio, booked in for June, and Suzanne and Sister Rachel are booked in for that course. It'd just be literally a few people at the moment. The house is basically full between the 3 of us. But it would, if there's 3 or 4 other people who want to come and join, as long as you're prepared to find your own accommodation, then you'd be very welcome. That will be in June. But that will tie in to preparation beforehand for those who wish. And both Marie and Rachel, and Suzanne, of course, all 3, were in Bethlehem earlier this year, and we had quite a long tutorial period leading up to that. So there are things sort of happening and available, and those tend to be the things that I'm finding people are really benefiting from and getting a lot from. So that's my thinking. But if people have anything they'd like to say about what they'd like to see more of, or what they find really helpful and useful, now is your chance.
Would you be having another one of your week courses like you were talking about?
Yes, I'm thinking that what I might do is in January, end of January, have one of the sort of week-long, or even 10 days, but spread out over 2 weeks with the weekend break at the end of January, and then another one maybe in April or something like that. So rather than doing lots of these lectures, I'd rather, I think, focus on doing some courses, because more people seem to enjoy that. So definitely I'll be putting at least 1, if not 2, if not 3 on next year. All right.
I think those are really good, and I think if you worked out some kind of a system, you might be able to create something from them, like a book or a not just a YouTube series, but something else also.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. Yeah, especially because the next volume of the manual is going to be on sort of posture and garments, so that would make it, say, a nice standing figure or something like that, something that I could do as a course, which would be a bit different than what we did before. But if people have any ideas, just chip them in. How many of you would like, really would like, another online course? Yep.
Ian.
Rachel, we're not hearing you because your microphone's off. That was, my ability at lip reading is limited.
I love watching your online courses, but actually using them I find difficult because I'm not likely to paint along with them. So it's a different thing completely. But yeah, but I love.
Can I ask how many of you like the sort of course because you paint along with it, or do most of you just like it because you're watching?
I like to paint.
Judith.
I like to paint.
Excellent. Okay, so you paint along with the sessions, as it were.
Yes, yes.
Okay. How many other people do that?
I would.
I get the drawing part. That's where
Okay, so you sort of hang in there for as best you can.
I have done in sort of further time ago, but I've sort of, it depends on how everything else in my life is panning out, really, I guess. Depends on one's mood, one's busyness, with that particular time. And there's sometimes, if you don't kind of get caught up with enthusiasm at the beginning, my sense is that I don't get back to it, even if I think I will. Yeah,
I think that's a good. Do you think it needs? I mean, this is just sort of me popping some ideas, but if, for example, if it was going to be at the end of January, and I make that, I sort that out now, and then people can commit to that time, would that be preferable to have lots of notice so you can sort of book in the time?
Yeah.
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 Yes.
Okay.
And also, Ian, it would be really great to have some pre-material, like a list of the pigments, or
Mhm.
just whatever it would take to get yourself
In
set
the
up.
zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah, a bit more organized, in other words, rather than my usual sort of throwing it all together and it just sort of muddles through. Okay.
Yeah. Because sometimes it was like, we're going to be working on, and then you would say, this is St. George, we're going to be doing the gilding, or not gilding,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
C-store, or I don't know, whatever. But then it might get moved, because you're working with the
Yeah.
situation. I don't know. I don't know.
Mm.
So you don't mind a bit of flexibility, but a bit of sort of stuff up front really helps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ian, I've done other courses online,
Yeah.
and the teacher would do the demonstration of the bit that we were working on, and then we would have half a day or a day to go away and do that. We could come back to the video and rewatch,
Yeah.
or even contact the teacher on a WhatsApp group if we were experiencing any difficulties, or we'd missed something, or whatever. And I found that very, very useful to do that. It probably means a bit more organization, but I found that a helpful way of working. So I could watch a video and then go away and do that part. And then
That sounds really neat, like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday kind of thing, with the Tuesday, Thursday work sessions for your catch up.
Something like that, or if it was just a small part, or maybe just half a day or a couple of hours, and then come back and rejoin the video. But anyway, that's just a way that I found helpful anyway.
Yeah. I think
How many people?
the sort of, if I do it live, so you're actually watching me as I'm doing it.
Yes. Yeah.
Then it takes a bit of time to get that then edited and uploaded. What I think other guys who are teaching do, they have it all pre-recorded. So it's all there ready to go, a bit like the academy courses. It's all there and you can follow it. So I just sort of went for, well, let's do a live course, and here it is, just it would be if you were in person, but with then the videos recording it, and that was available, but not immediately. And I think the thing about people being able to contact you and sort of say, I'm stuck with this and that sort of thing. If that would be okay if the sessions were, say, for just an hour in the morning, say 9 o'clock till 10, because then you've got the time then, because when people do contact you, it is really quite time consuming sometimes to actually, open it up, get what they've sent you, etc. So I have to think about that in terms of how much time that would be therefore committed to doing it, and that would then also affect costs, because my courses I keep them really at a minimum, and then if people want to, you can always get a tutorial credit, so that's always available. Maybe I need to sort of make that clearer to people. If you're in the middle of it and you want feedback, the cost is I keep basic. And then if people want those extras, then they can those bits as and when they need it. I don't know, cost is another issue. And I don't know what people feel about that. I mean, some of you have done lots of courses with other people. You'll have an idea of how much that costs you, what mine costs. How do you feel?
I do know that some other courses do offer like a couple of tiers. You can do that basic one. or you can have, you know, additional help and
Right.
feedback. I mean, I know that that's included in some options,
Mhm.
whether, you know.
So to do it as an option rather than individually sort of going, you just sort of band it. So there's basic and that would be easier. I hadn't thought about that. That's an interesting one. Anyway, so that's where we are. That's where I'm thinking to go next year. So I will do some lectures and things, but they will be a bit ad hoc. And I'll do them without, there'll really be a sort of presentation on YouTube. And people can, because I found with the lectures that very few people actually want to go away and talk about it. You know, at the end, we tried doing that, and generally speaking, most people didn't really get a lot out of that. So it's nice having our community and I can talk and see you. But in terms of like, usually when I give a lecture, it's just me talking rather than a dialogue. So I don't know how you feel. You're the people in the room. Would it make so much difference not seeing each other and just seeing me, or what do you think?
Well, it's nice to know that other people are there.
That's true. Yes.
Yes.
And in fact, the people that are here today were all here last year
Yep.
at the same time. And you know that there's a group, you know, and there's a commitment. So there is, and some of you are closer to each other, you know, like geographically and stuff. But I thought the talks were okay. Sometimes they didn't have much to go on, but you know, when we got together and talked, so, but you know, like I found out about people that they were involved in different other lessons, and you know, those are kind of interesting to know about where they are in their icon, you know, painting or what they're working on. I really feel that that's helpful a little bit. And then also we don't seem to be using the Facebook that much for interacting anymore. So,
or the website. That's what I mean. It's sort of like everything seems to have sort of bumped along. So it's sort of, I'm thinking how to give it a bit of a boost, really, give it a bit of a shake up and get some more energy into it, I suppose.
So not all of us use Facebook at any rate. So that's one bit, but also the website, it's not very clear how to use it, Ian, if I'm honest.
Okay.
It would be much more helpful, perhaps, if it was clear how to set up a chat group on it or something.
Right.
And when it loads, it takes a long time to load the community page because it puts absolutely every message.
I know. Yes, it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
and I couldn't find a way to like direct message a person, you know, like if I had a question, I couldn't figure out how to do that.
And I'm not sure if to be honest, I haven't really paid much attention to it for the last sort of 6 months, I suppose. So maybe I need to just have a revisit, give it a bit of a polish. But I suppose it's catch-22. When you know it's only like a couple of people that are making use of it, you just get tired. Whereas if you know lots of people are really keen for it, then you put the energy in, because where you get people telling you, "Oh, we've tried to get in, we couldn't get in." Yep. You know. So that's all good.
I don't know if that's I don't know that people will be going there. I don't know. I mean, yeah.
But this is useful feedback. It's useful feedback, and you know, we'll get. I'm thinking about next year and how to shape things. So all of this is really, really, really useful. And I may even change my mind and say, okay, we'll go back to having the lectures, just simply because, you know, there's a group of people who really say, no, I really like the format. So we'll see.
I think maybe sometimes, as I think you've intimated, Ian, sometimes things need to just have a rest for a while,
Yeah.
and then come back to it.
Mm.
I'm just feeling that the energy will come with online courses when we're all getting down to some painting and gilding and whatnot.
Mm.
That maybe, I think that will give it the boost that you would like to see, and we would like to see too.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll have some more thoughts, and I'll send out a newsletter, hopefully before Christmas, sort of shaping up for the year, and we'll try another slight. I'll tweak it, see where we get to. But I just want to say thank you for those of you who have been very dedicated in coming, and I appreciate it.
I've really enjoyed the lectures. So
Yeah,
Oh,
I
good.
have.
Oh, well, thank you,
I
Rachel.
have.
That's
Yeah, even when I've had to go to a recording, which has been quite a few times, I have really enjoyed that getting my head around some of the
Yeah.
finer points, if you like. Yeah.
And I do know that I think quite a lot of people do go to the recordings, which is again why I'm thinking, well, actually,
Yeah.
if I just do it as a broadcast and make it open to anybody who wants to, and it's so then rather than being, say, for the 25 people maximum who might log into even the recording afterwards, if I make it free for everybody, then at least it begins to develop a following. And so that community becomes, it changes the dynamic. So for those who want the sort of being alongside in a group of people, there's the tutorials, which I think quite a few of you here have been part of. And then the lectures sort of dissolve a bit and become more open. And hopefully that brings other people's in. And then with the courses sort of sporadically during the year, that becomes a sort of in-person gathering point like this, because then you see each other, you know, for the sessions, and you recognize a face and see what people are doing.
I think that has a nice dynamic to it, Ian.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you can always comment on the YouTube if you want to make a conversation start, you know.
Mm-hmm. And actually, there is a way, if I ever get myself sorted, to actually do a Zoom meeting, which is simultaneously broadcast on Zoom, on YouTube. So then people can either log in because they want to be part of a dialogue, or they can just log in to watch. So that's also another option. But I haven't sorted that, so I'm not saying to do that yet. It took me all morning to get this all set up, and I hope now you see what I'm going to do. And if this works, there we are, you see. So I've got you can see my desk, though it's frozen at the moment. There we are. And you can see me at the same time, okay? Because for today's lecture, I want to talk about mountains. And rather than talking about the theory of mountains, because last lecture we talked about landscapes, and I talked to you a lot about that and about the vision of paradise and stuff. Mountains are the ascetical landscape that really took over from about the 11th, 12th century onwards. And that really grew with the increasing dominance of monasticism in Byzantine culture. So if you remember, you had the iconoclastic controversy in the 8th century, 9th century. Then sort of Byzantium sort of got a bit of steam behind it. It recovered a bit after the Islamic invasion. Bit of a renaissance. But then 1205, 1206, the Crusaders ransacked Constantinople, and that really began the final long, slow decline of Byzantium. But as the political power was waning, the spiritual power of the monasteries, for example, Mount Athos, became ever more important for the whole Byzantine thing. And that included the liturgy and the art of the liturgy. And as that focus became more and more within the monastic context, so you see a particular spirituality rooting itself, which is a very ascetical one. So whereas in the earlier period, the vision of the Christian life was very much focused on the gaining of paradise and the heavenly banquet and so forth, with the rise of monasticism, the focus becomes on the struggle to get there. So the focus is no longer the destination so much as the path that you're going through. And so, for example, you see this reflected in landscapes. So here, for example, in this typical Greek depiction of the baptism of Jesus, it's a totally arid landscape. The colors are the colors of sand, of gravel, and of rocks. This isn't a verdant landscape of paradise. And even the angels who represent the sort of, there's a transition in baptism from death to life. So John the Baptist standing, calling people to repentance, Jesus entering into the waters to bring life to the waters, which take people into the realm of the angels in heaven. But when you look at that landscape, it is rough and harsh. This is an ascetical landscape. So it's really sort of the beginning of the ascetical journey, which here, notice it's vertical, the verticality of the composition. This is like steps leading up to heaven. So grace is coming down, splitting open the created order, filling it with grace to raise us up to heaven. So Christ empties himself to raise us up. So Christ humbles himself and pours himself out for the life of the world. And through grace, we are raised up through the power of the Spirit to heaven. So here you have this very rugged, dramatic landscape, which in the ladder of ascent, which was a monastic, very important monastic work from the monastery of St. Catherine's in Sinai, very much seeing the spiritual life as ascending up a mountain. And this is a theme that sort of runs in Christian spirituality, East and West, even until today, especially through the Carmelites, for example. So we're on a journey, we are pilgrims, we practice asceticism in order to purify ourselves from the attachments to this world so that we can rise up from our passions, from our sensuality, and be prepared for the final transfiguration into heaven. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is sort of really the second part about landscapes that we started last time. So I thought, I mean, that's basically what we're talking about. I thought, why not do a little bit of an examination by demonstrating to you what we're talking about, how to do these rugged landscapes. Now, once the camera catches up, there we are. Can you see that? Okay. There are 4 examples of mountains. Now, the one on the bottom corner bottom right-hand corner, these are what I call melted mountains. This is an earlier style, really, where there's a psalm verse in the Psalms that says the mountains melt like wax at the presence of God. And you can see there's sort of a melted feeling about these. They have their little outcrops at the top, but the forms are very fluid. It is like a melted candle. You know, if you've, I don't know if you've ever burnt candles too long, and then you come back and then there's all that sort of mound of melted wax sort of in a great lump. Very much sort of like that. The sweep, it's not a rugged landscape. It is paradise where the mountains have melted and the forms have become playful. And to be honest, I really like this form. However, what a lot of people end up doing is these type of mountains, these two, either the top right or the bottom left, where you get these little, see the one at the top, this is Novgorod, and you can tell it's Novgorod because it has these little rocks, which, I don't know, did any of you know the clangers? Do you remember the clangers from when we were kids? Gosh, now I'm really showing my age. I think the fact that you all remember the clangers says we're all of the same generation. But you know, they have those little eyes sort of on their head. Well, when I saw these rocks, it's the clangers. So you see these little, and it's like these little eyes, and they almost have characters. You see the way these sort of top bits sort of pop up. It's like they've sort of popped out of a hole and they're having a little look around with their little little eyes. So these very, very stylized, painted in a very minimalistic style, and very famous because of the sort of Novgorod style. And a lot of people like doing this sort of thing because it seems easy. Because they're very, you can see, oh, it's very sharp and straight, and I can see the shape and I can paint it. Well, it's deceptively easy, because actually, if you look very closely, you can see, you see at the back here, if I just fill the whole screen like that. Can you see the back here is a series of reds? There's a very dark edge. At the front, there's yellow. And between the two, there is a sort of pinkish yellow. Then you've got the highlights, which are done with increasing strength in a pure white. So this is very much the sort of flashes, the photosmoi, these flashes almost of electric light bursting out into the cosmos as God's presence is revealed. Now you get that sort of sense of a landscape bathed in light with the bottom one, but it's a bit of a contrast because the one above, these are sort of flecks of light that just go boom, whereas the bottom one, they're bathed in light. It's like they're sort of poured this sort of gossamer light over them, transforming them. Now the ones on the left, sort of a bit of a sort of combination of the two, in that you see the way the light, especially on this one here, the bottom left, the grey one, that light face is sort of bathing all of that side of the mountain. And in the one above, you can see how you've got this sort of darkish color, but then it's sort of, you got the middle color and then the quite extensive highlights on the edges. So 4 different ways of doing mountains, 3 of them ascetical, rugged steps. And you can see that very clearly, how you've got step, step, step. Waiting there. So you've got step, 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 step. And the way it's done is not receding backwards, but they're coming forwards. And that's true of all 3. This one especially, see how that's sort of reaching right over, and the steps literally taking you over. With this one, it's like it's all tilted. The whole mass is sort of pushed over. It's almost like an earthquake where the land is being pushed up. This one, it's more stacked, rather than leaning over. But that sense of movement is in the way see that curved line there. So these ledges are where the movement is. So it's taking you across. So you can either have the whole mass moving, or you can have this sense of movement from the shape of the ledges. Is this making sense? Okay. Because I think it's really important when we're working on doing a landscape, and I've got to do some mountains, to understand the different styles that there are, even if you say, I want to go for that rugged style, but there's different ways in which you can do that. And you need to be asking yourself the question of, well, how do these particular rocks work? And is it suitable for what the icon that I'm doing is saying? Now, obviously, if you're just copying an icon as a model and just going all the way through with it, that's not such an important question. But if you're actually composing icons, so you've got a basic model, but you want to tweak it a bit, you have to really think through not only what type of elements you're going to change, but the style in which they're done. So, for example, if you did the baptism of Jesus, you've got to think about, well, how are those rocks relating to that presence of Jesus coming into the waters? And, Christ emptying himself, descending into the waters, for example. So you might want to have either the rocks sort of stacked so they're opening up because they're opening up to heaven, or you might want them almost bowing down in recognition that Christ has come down even into the earth. So you could do 2 things just off the top of one's head. Okay. Is that making sense? Questions? Okay. So the next question then comes, well, how do we draw them? How do we paint them? So, I don't know, can you see it over here? I've changed my working procedure a bit. Let me just see if I can. Trying to get rid of something so I can see something. So you see here, I now use a sheet of glass as my palette. So instead of using the little ceramic wells, and one of the reasons for that is when it dry, I hate spending half an hour clearing up at the end of a painting session. Now, it really drives me bonkers. And then I'm lazy and I leave it. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. And I come back and the first thing I've got to do is clean everything. And that is so depressing. But by that point, you've got no choice. You all with me? You know what I mean? Yeah. This is the answer. Okay, so I'll let you in on this secret. So I've got this is an old bit of glass from a window when I had the double glazing put in. So I kept them all. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And I've got some duct tape, which I put around the edges to make it safe. So that's what this black stuff is. And then with a Stanley blade or one of those razor blades, you know, with a little, use it for doing decorating. Look at this. Now you see my dry, dirty paint? Voila. You didn't believe me. Now look at the, I'll move this so you can see this. There we are. Can you see the purple? Now look, that is really dry and caked on. It's quite eggy. Voila. Transformé. Look. So then that did not take me half an hour. No, you know, wasting water, very ecological. And then all I need to do is scrape it into there. And then usually I just use a bit of kitchen paper just to take off any bits of dust so it's still pure. And there we are. Okay, so copyright. Sure. So this is now my new working environment. I love it. I just love it. And then because today is cold, I can feel the snow coming, to be honest. So I've got the heater on down there, but I've got my little heating mat underneath. So it's warming my little fingers. That I got 2 of these for €25. And I really recommend them if you work in a cold place, because it just keeps your fingers warm. You know, that awful feeling. And I have another one which I put under my feet. So that way I can remain warm easily. So mountains. So I've got a bit of Bristol board here. And when it comes to drawing them, the first thing to think about is how do you want to stack them? Now, you don't want to create a receding landscape. And that's usually quite a big temptation. I have a little bit of scrap paper, 1 second. So I just do this sort of scratch here. If I just go back to my overhead like this. So usually, you know, people think of mountains sort of in the background like this, and then they do trees, maybe a couple of trees like this, and then they'll have a house down here or something like that. And they make the mountains sort of recede backwards. And they do that by making the way the shapes dominate the composition. Whereas in the icon, it's more like setting a stage set. So the mountains are minimal, and they're there to make the point. So if this is my, and say we've got the nativity, so we've got Our Lady, and here baby Jesus, and we've got the cave like that. And I want to maybe have the mountains point down to Jesus, and I want so it's opening up to the heavens, which is coming down with the star like that, and then I want to have these steps sort of like that, and then that comes down like that, and then we've got maybe a bit of, I'll talk a little bit more about what I'm doing in a second, but do you see how instead of a receding background, I've the mountains are holding the Christ and the Virgin Mary. They're not in proportion to the size of the cave. So the cave is holding Mary and baby Jesus, and then the rest of the mountains are not in proportion to the size of that cave. And so instead of receding back, they simply hold the composition. Okay. And if say, for example, using the idea of those steps pointing down to the center of the scene here. 1, 2, 3, because we're thinking of steps, okay. 1, 2, 3. There's 3 steps. And then so you see, I am literally carving these out at the moment, and then I'm making a ledge that then comes in like that. So what I'm doing is doing these sort of little peaks, which then okay. So I started out with some steps, and then I've, as it were, given the steps a base. They've got to stand on something, and I'm having those come out of the mountain itself, which sort of can sit like that, and don't make them too regular. But you need to make sure that you have these distinctions either, and usually these ledges are in combinations of 2s and 3s. Okay, so 2 here, 3 there, 3 there, 2 here. And so I might have one sort of mountain peak like that, and then coming down, but then I need to sort of intersperse that with maybe another couple of ledges here. So I'm keeping the sort of rhythm so that they look like they belong together, but I'm having one and another sort of into one standing in front of the other, breaking it down, creating interest, creating movement, creating balance. Okay. And then I could have just maybe one little extra ledge down here. Something like that. Okay. Then these are very solid and heavy. So I'm going to then put another little ledge or 2 on the top, with a couple of little boulders on the top of those. So there you've got the clangers, okay, sitting up. Now they've got their little eyes, okay, and then maybe a couple of little boulders down at the bottom. Something like that. That's roughly what I'm doing. So you can see there's a movement now very strongly up and down. Okay. So the mountains taking your eyes on a journey, which means that something important should be happening down here or down here. Okay. And say, for example, these are quite big, so it would be, I'd be making this much more substantial, I think. So that's not too different. So maybe another lot, another 2 here. something like that. Then the little step on the top and the okay, so you see how you've got I've created a base. This is sort of standing on that base. And so that would then come in a little bit further like that, a little bit more. And then you could think about having some sort of now, I'm going to paint an example in a minute, but I just want to try and get you to understand the principles on which we're creating these. Okay. So questions. This is because maybe I've not been really very clear. So if you want to ask some questions, now's the chance.
So was this the nativity that you're building this into, or was it just
It's a general example.
general mountains? Okay.
With something happening over here.
Okay.
Okay, so for example, you could have had one of Jesus's healing miracles. Or you could have, for example, the appearance of St. Michael, and so on. You've got your business happening in the middle, and how those mountains are constructed to relate to that.
Okay. And this is the one side, and there would be mountains maybe on the other?
Quite probably, yes.
Okay.
Now, for example, it may be that if you've got a sort of icon like that size, and then you've got a sort of standing figure like this, you might have, for example, these rocks just in the bottom. Something like that. You've got an ascetic saint, you might have mountains just in the bottom. So this might not be so big, but the arrangement remains basically the same. All right. So whether you're constructing some massive rock context or it's constructing some little rocks at the bottom, this is basically how you construct them. So if we look back at these examples, wait for the camera to catch up. You can see here you've got one main one and then two behind it coming out. Got one main one and then two coming out and opening it up. One main one and then one secondary one. So it's wider, becoming narrower, even though it's doing it in some nice quirky ways. Can see in this one, you've got the whole mountain mass, but it's broken down into one piece, two pieces, three pieces. So one piece, two piece, three piece. So you need to stack your mountains in a way that holds them together, but gives them a sort of personality or a character. So for example, in this one, you can see you've got this one here, and then those two sort of moving from right to left, but they still all belong together. And notice the rhythm. You see that diagonal line. This camera is annoying me now. So you see you've got diagonal line, but look, you have the same sort of diagonals happening over the other side as well. So you create varieties and unity. And another example, we see that angle there and this angle down there. And that's reflected then in those two angles as well, and that little angle at the top. So you remember the whole thing about resonances, keeping resonances in the construction. Okay. So patterns, angles, shapes, let them relate to each other. And you can see that, for example, in the bottom one here, they're all these sort of lozenge shapes. So you've got a wider, fatter one, you've got taller, thinner one, another taller, thinner one, but sort of reversed, and then those little peaks at the top. Here, you've got one big pyramid, but you have these little pyramids at the top of each section. So you see that little pyramid, that little pyramid, that little off-center pyramid. This is sort of coming together. So you're getting, once you've got a shape of the whole, it's reflected then in the way in which individual parts are constructed. So you create a whole and then give it interest by echoing the basic shape and reproducing that in different ways within the whole. So for example, this one, see, you've got this very strong triangular shape. It's like an arrow. But the whole thing is like an arrow. So it's very sharp coming down. This whole shape is here and across and over. That's exactly what you've got here. It comes across and goes over. You've got the breadth at the moment and it comes over the top. So try to keep an eye on doing that. Okay. Now, finally, I want to just give a little demonstration of how to paint these, because people get into a real mess when it comes to painting mountains. But certainly the way to start is quite useful. It's quite interesting. So I'm going to mix up a little red. There's one of mine. Okay, so I've got a little my burnt sienna, which I quite like. And I'm going to do a the ones at the top right hand side. So first of all, I'm just going to mix up my colors. So for this, I'm going to use the burnt sienna and a how do I find this? Maybe a raw sienna. So burnt sienna and raw sienna. I'm going to start just with those. See where we got to. Okay. So if I was going to draw this, you know, from a sketch, maybe I would end up with something just as a guide, like that and like that. That's going to be my basic shape. Okay. But I'm just going to make some very watery paint, and start by just sort of randomly putting in some of those shells. Okay, I'm not copying that one. I'm just using that as a place to start. And then again, a little bit of So you see, I'm literally just playing at the moment with some very watery colour, putting in some shadows. Remember, shadows give us form. So I think like that. And then it's going to, again, with quite watery paint, and following the sort of shapes that have, but I'm not trying to make it even. I'm really am making this quite random, and using the tempera to create a variety of darks and lights. And I want it to have a lot of texture. So you can see that's already beginning to get some sort of feel. It's looking rocky. The next thing I need to do is to just sort of darken some areas. So what I usually do is allow the paint and the way it's dried to guide me. So this bit here, you sharpen that up a little bit like that. It's over here. Sharpen that up. And then I want to have a little bit of a sort of, and just on that edge, I just deepen the paint there. Let's see if I can. There we are. So you see, I'm just sort of those edges, and just now sharpening where that paint has been. I'm just sort of creating some more definite edges. But I'm not going over everything, so I'm really creating a variety of textures. And then I'm going to use now, going to this red, and you see the difference that makes straight away. So I'm going to pick up some of these elements. See how that's now beginning to give those ledges real form. And I'm just sort of, and I'm introducing little ledges down there, for example. And then just sort of breaking those open a little bit. I'm going to go to a smaller brush. And I'm going back to my red paint. And creating much more dense bits at the back like that. Then here, for example, make a nice sharp edge and leaving some of the previous layer still there. And using this to just create some definitions in there. And then maybe strengthen that there. And this is where you can now refine those, the edges of those little steps like that. So you see how that's now beginning to really and just distinguishing forms more and more so that the darker side is receding and the lighter side is pushing forward. That. And then I can go back to my raw sienna a little bit. And for example, here, I don't want these ledges in the red, but I want them to have a little bit more form. So I can strengthen those. And I'm keeping the paint nice and thin so we get a real luminosity. It's quite luminous. I don't know if it's coming across in the camera so well, but and you can just push the paint then to make nice little steps to take you up the way. Okay, blend some of that out. Go back to this. I'm just literally picking bits out with the brush and creating again and again, step and step and step. So now put that more back like this. So is that making sense to you? Now, finally would be to put the highlights on. But this is white paper rather than using the gessoed board. So the white will be slow to pick up. But let's just try and see if I can get some titanium white to work on this. Just see if we can do that. But you see, now I've created a sort of radiant mass of rocks, and they're sort of bubbling a bit, but a bit sort of on fire. Zoom out for a little minute. I'm just making some titanium white here. And then what we need to do is pick up the edges like this and sort of paint some just little square blocks just on the very edges. And then just sort of and the ones at the top tend to be the brightest ones. Those are the nearest to the heavens. And these highlights are in a variety of shapes, but usually quite pointed shapes. So it's straight along there, and then it's sort of thin, thick, thin lines going back. As you can see, it's sort of absorbing and you also get sometimes a sort of like a wash of color over the surface, especially on like the Transfiguration. Now, what I could do here is now put just a little bit of blue into the white. So it's sort of cool. And, you know, blue and yellow or orange are complementaries. So just using this to to get this. It's not really showing on the camera. Sorry about this, but it does actually. It's quite electric. Because though it's white, it's got this little touch of blue, which gives a nice popping contrast. All right. There we are. All right, everybody. Well, it's now 20 past 1. So I think that brings us nicely to a conclusion for today's lecture. And hopefully you can all go away now and play painting mountains. Okay. I would let this dry, and then I'd maybe bring in some more precise lines. Just you can see where it gets darker on the edge, for example. I might define those a little bit more, playing with the range of intensities and stuff. But that shows you a very easy way to create mountains. You can just sort of mess around with paint, really, and then push a little bit and push the other, but with a general sense of how they're coming together and what they're growing out of, so they're organic. All right, everybody. So
Yeah.
I just go down. Yep. There we are. So everybody, those of you who want to come back later, see yet more mountains being painted, I shall be here at 4 o'clock UK time for another final session. Otherwise, I wish you a very happy Christmas, very happy Advent, very happy All Saints Day, and look forward to seeing you in the new year. Hopefully, we'll have a nice, fun course to do towards the middle of end of January. So in those awful, wet, wintry days, you'll be able to sort of gather together with a nice cup of coffee and some brushes and get some nice painting done. All right.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Brilliant.
you.
Any questions, anybody, before we finish? Super. All right, everybody. Well, God bless, and see some of you later.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Um,